Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the West Shore Photography Club meeting of April 22nd, 2024. Tonight, we will be doing a before and after. But before we do that, I want to turn it over. Joe, I want you to kind of do, well, before we start that, let's look at past trips. Um, Mary, can you give us an update on the Anderson Mill trip that was taken 2 weeks ago?
I can.
All
Anderson
right.
Mills, a beautiful day, kind of chilly, but really beautiful. And I forget that Harry, I think his name's Harry. He kept the lights off for us, and we had natural light inside, and it turned out just perfect, just beautiful. If anyone else wants to like put in their 2 cents, I would be happy to hear it.
I enjoyed it.
I did.
I mean, we didn't have as many people as expected, and the owner, Harry, was a little disappointed in that. But I thought overall it was very nice. The lighting was wonderful. So it was a good day. Okay, Curtis, can you give us a brief overview of the Kiwanis Lake trip from last weekend?
Yes, we attended the Kiwanis Lake on Saturday. We had a great crowd there. We had about 16. We had a little bit of light fog in the morning, which was nice when we were photographing the black crowned night herons. The sun came out, and the birds started flying, and we all scampered over and started shooting the egrets. And they put on quite a show for us, and I think some people got some nice shots from what I saw on Facebook. They really look nice. We do have another outing to Kiwanis Lake, and that'll be May the 18th. That would be feeding the chicks. And that one we expect to be a really good one too. And hope everyone can make it.
Excellent. Thank you. Joe, upcoming events.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, we do have we have the Hershey tulips and the butterfly garden, and Elaine and Mary Fox have organized that one. And the good thing about the butterfly garden, Michael is going to be there, and he is going to be leading us on photography. He's a photographer for the butterfly garden, and he's going to be helping us with composition and getting the right settings and blah, blah, blah. That'll be really a lot of fun in addition to the tour. And then Eve and Mary, you're doing one in Lidditz here coming up too, aren't you? A couple weeks?
Yes, I'm not sure if Evie's on. Yeah, we're doing one in Littleton. I think it's May 11th. And
Okay.
Littleton is always fun because it's a main street and there's restaurants, there's all kind of small shops, and none of them are like Walmarts or anything like that. And everybody's friendly and fun. I think everybody that goes there will have a good time and maybe want to stay longer.
Thanks, Mary. We have Surrey Brook Gardens coming up, and this is Elaine Shook, one of her favorite spots. And it's more than just gardens. There's a lot of really cool buildings and walkways. It's absolutely drop dead gorgeous place, and that's coming up. We do have a speaker in a couple of weeks coming, and that's Alan Ross. And Alan was the assistant to Ansel Adams for 5 years and worked with him, particularly in Yosemite. And he has lots of really cool war stories and how Ansel Adams went about his work. And Alan still produces black and white prints for their Masterwork series, which are the original images that Ansel Adams has, and he prints those at the Ansel Adams Gallery in Yosemite. So that's going to be a really cool. And then we've also had quite a few people ask us about photographing the Milky Way. And I think all of us around here know that photographing it in this area is very, very difficult because we have the light pollution, we have the moisture in the air, so it doesn't really lend itself well. And so we have Savannah Della. She is from the Boston area, and she's going to do a session for us on Milky Way and Star Trails 101. And the idea is that she's going to teach us the very basics, and she's going to give everybody a cheat sheet So when you go on vacation, like maybe up to Acadia in Maine, or if you go to out west, you can take that cheat sheet with you. And if you have an opportunity in the evening, you can try and get some Milky Way shots. And she's excellent at this and teaches quite a few workshops on it. And she's going to do that for us. So that'll be a good thing to put in our hat when we go on vacation. And there's quite a few other things we have coming up, but those are some of the highlights. Mark.
Okay, great. Curtis, what about our next trip to Kiwanis Lake?
Yes, so the next trip to Kiwanis Lake will be feeding the chicks. And that will take place on May the 18th. And again, at 8 a.m. in the morning. They should be old enough that they'll be visible above the edge of the nest, and should be a good time.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. I forgot to mention when we started the meeting, I have started closed captioning. So if anybody wishes to use that, they can do that. Okay, now I am going to share screen. See how we go here.
We can see it, Mark.
Okay, great. Great.
There's no images, it says.
That's right. There isn't any yet. There will be in a moment, but there isn't any
Okay.
yet. I'm trying to figure out how to get things arranged here so I can. Okay. We had 7 people submit images, which is kind of lower than normal, but the bad part about only having 7 images is you're going to have to listen to me and Joe talk more. But other than that, the first person is Rod Frazier. And Rod, do you want to show them next to each other? Or do you want to show the after first and then the before? And what do you want to do?
Show the before first.
There's your before. Can you see it?
Well, this is Indian Echo Caverns. I'm
Do we just lose Rod?
Right, we're losing the audio.
Yeah, Rod, you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. This is Indian Echo Caverns. I didn't get a chance to go with you guys, so I went the following week. And of course, I didn't have a group of photographers with me. I just had people. And I noticed that all the images that I've seen that you guys have sent on Facebook, I didn't see anything on the outside of the caverns. Everything was on the inside. So my first picture, I thought I would take on the outside of the cavern. And it was pretty bright, so the light was kind of harsh. So I just wanted to see what I could do with this image. And let me follow Mark's guidelines here. Well, I knew I was going to process it in Lightroom Classic. That's my main processing program. And the lens I use for most of my pictures, I use the Nikkor 24-200. And this image was 1:660 second. The f/5.3 and the ISO was 125. And see, you can see it's kind of bright. And this guy wasn't posing, he was just in the way. All right, let's do after now.
Okay. Here you go.
All right, so like I said, I use Lightroom Classic. I also use Topaz Sharpen and Photoshop Beta. So what did I do? Well, first of all, I put the image into Lightroom Classic, And when I'm in the library mode, I actually use the auto button first just to see what kind of image I get. And either I'll use it and play with it in the developing mode, or else I'll reset it. And I think in this case, I kept the image. I mean, I kept what the auto presented. Next thing I did, well, actually, can you put them side to side now?
Yeah, absolutely. Whoops, hold on. Okay, I'm gonna get this right yet. There we go.
All right, well, the first thing I did was to crop it to see how much of this guy I could get rid of. And also to balance it or make it more horizontal. And let's see. And I wanted to concentrate on the entrance. So I did decrease the exposure a little bit to darken it, and I increased the contrast. You can see I did some burning because you can't, on the original image, you can't really see the IEC, the Indian Echo Caverns. So I burned that, darkened it, and I kind of darkened the gravel and also kind of the entrance way. And let's see, what else did I do? I used I played with the colors. I usually play with the colors just to see if I can get a really decent colors on the film. And the guide told us that the stones were made from blue limestone. So I played with the blue to see if I could actually see it, and I think I did. So I increased the blues. I also increased the greens, and I thought it made a pretty decent image. After I played with the colors, I took it to Photoshop, and what was left of the guy I just got rid of using the generative fill. And then I took it to Topaz Sharp and just kind of sharpened everything up. And that was my final image.
No, great, great. Any questions for Rod?
Hey, I've got one, and I think it relates to the timing of all of these things, but I typically use Topaz before I do the other processing. And then if the sequence was accurate, I heard that Topaz sharpening was at the end. So just some discussion on that would be helpful. Thanks.
Okay, yeah, I've done both also. In this case, I did it at the end, but I sometimes I'll play with it and just kind of see what kind of image I get.
Thanks.
Okay, yeah. Any other questions?
What camera were you
Question,
using?
Mark, I have a question. Which do you prefer? I mean, did you do Topaz before or after like Lightroom?
No, who's the question to?
Well, to you or to Mark or to Joe. I mean, whichever. I mean, I'm not.
Rod,
I-
answer it.
Oh, I said in this case, I did it before, but I've also, I mean, I did it afterwards, but I've also done it before.
Do you have a preference?
No, not, well, it depends, it depends on the original image.
Okay,
So, yeah, not really.
okay. Dick Messner, you had a question.
Yes, Rod, which Nikon camera were you using?
That was the Z6.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you, Rod. We're gonna now move on to Dick Messner. I'm assuming, Dick, you want your before first? Go, all yours.
Now you can hear me.
Now I can hear you. That's right.
Okay. A little background here. In February, I decided I wanted to plan some type of trip. Actually, I was chasing waterfalls and doing a lot of searching on the internet. One thing led to another, and I ended up down in the western tip of South Carolina, North Carolina, and up into Tennessee. The photo you're looking at was taken on March 14th of this year, the western end of South Carolina. What I didn't know is for 2 days prior to this date, the National Park Service, with cooperation from the forestry departments of both states, were conducting controlled burns of the forest floor. This resulted in early morning smoke in the many valleys that appear as fog in the image, and also added color to the sunrise. So I feel that the smoke actually helped me, considering I was in March and fog wouldn't normally be in these valleys at that time. But from the photo, you can't tell what month of the year it is. Photo was taken with a Nikon D850 SLR and a 24 to 120 millimeter Nikon lens. And it is an HDR composite of 5 images and processed as an HDR composite in Adobe Lightroom. And I'll talk more about that. As with any fine art pursuit, it was a learning process. The goal was to produce a single wide landscape image for above my fireplace in my living room. Due to the speed at which I knew sunrises change, I wanted multiple exposures at a fast rate without manually changing my camera settings once I started in the dark. And I did not have the option to merge multiple images as I would have preferred under good lighting conditions. On a solid tripod base, I set the camera in the location I wanted for the landscape to be framed on each side by trees. I manually focused to infinity and then backed off 1/4 turn. I set my ISO to 64 for what I considered to be the finest possible image detail and dynamic range. I used aperture priority at f14 in hopes of a starburst as the sun rose and a depth of field from infinity to as close to the camera as it would come. I left the camera pick the shutter speed, and I set a 3-second time delay for my shutter button instead of using a cable release. I took a single shot and saw on the camera's LCD screen that the camera was struggling to increase the exposure to get a properly exposed daylight image, which is what I expected. And this was before the sun actually broke the horizon. There was just a glow out there in that direction. I used the camera's exposure compensation to set the compensation to -3, took another image, and the LCD showed the next image to have pure blacks with a slight sun glow. And I started to work with the pure blacks. Knowing that fast camera setting changes would be cumbersome in the dark and that my setup was not perfect, I set the camera's burst mode to 5 images. One as per the above setting that would be my starting point in the post-processing image review. And at 2 stop intervals, I took 2 underexposed and 2 overexposed. In other words, a 5 burst setup there for an HDR. I felt that these 5 images taken in burst mode would give me at least 1 image to use in post-processing. Every few minutes, I shot a burst as the sun moved from the horizon into the smoky clouds. As you can see, the smoke adds color and appears as fog in the numerous mountain valleys. After each burst, I checked the LCD screen and made the adjustments as I needed to. And let me flip a page on my notes here. Pardon the cumbersome
It's
on
okay.
my fingers. Lightroom revealed the multitude of images, but it was easy from the film strip at the bottom of the screen to select the primary image from each burst due to the 2-stop exposure between them. And in about 15 minutes, I shot 10 bursts of images. So I'd have a large selection to pick from. I first searched the primary images to select the starburst effect that I liked. Then I made an HDR image from the 5-burst group. The HDR image showed ISO at 64 where I left it, but I don't understand, and maybe somebody can clarify. The final HDR said I had an f-stop of 20 at 1/125th of a second. I don't know what the camera or what Lightroom did to come up with that. I did a freeform landscape crop proportion to my liking. Why don't we change to the final image now, if you would, Mark?
Certainly. We get a little bigger for you.
Thank you. Fill the screen with it if you can. I lowered the highlights, increased the shadows, textures, clarity, dehaze, and vibrance. My standard sharpening that I start off with in Lightroom is always 60 and 85% masking. It looked good, so I didn't change any of that. No noise reduction was used, and a -10 vignette was added. I used a linear mask starting at the top and feathered to the center of the sun to cool the white balance. A similar mask over the bottom used the same white balance plus additional texture and clarity. An oval mask over the sunburst warmed that area and added contrast. The final image was sized to 11 inches by 32 inches and printed on an Epson luster roll paper on my Epson P600 printer. The image is being framed as we speak. Questions, comments?
Dick, this is Joe Farrell.
Yeah.
You did, this is not a panel, this is a single shot and you
This is a
made,
single shot,
okay.
and I'm able to get it 32 inches wide.
Just curious, if you were doing that as a pano, and I know you do panos.
Yes.
So do you do those in a horizontal fashion or do you flip your camera to vertical and take your panos?
I would flip it vertical most of the time. I use the vertical quite often up in Alaska, and I currently have a 6-image panel of Mount Denali from 35 miles north of Mount Denali. It's hanging on my wall. It's printed almost 40 inches wide.
Okay,
Turned out pretty good.
curious.
Hey, Dick, I've got a question for you. You said this is going to be 32-inch wide image?
Yes, 11 inches high, 32 inches wide.
Okay. Did you send it through any special software to upscale it?
No,
Okay.
I was very happy with the ISO 64 and the performance of the Nikon D850.
Oh, okay, great, great. Any other questions? Okay.
Dick, this is Carla Maddox.
Yes,
I just want to say that it is absolutely gorgeous.
well,
And
thank
I'm
you.
sure wherever you hang in your room, it will be there forever. It's gorgeous.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right, moving
By the
on.
way, I did take quite a few waterfall pictures the same week that I was down there in that area.
And we're
Thank you
looking
very
forward
much,
to see
everybody.
some. We're looking forward to
Eventually
see
you
some
will.
of them.
You will eventually.
Okay, great. Okay, Carly, you're next. And what do we want here?
Yeah, we'll do that one first.
Okay, let me get it to fit right. I can't tell if it's quite fitted right. It's being angry at me. There we go.
Well, okay. I assume you all know where this was taken at the Harrisburg train station. But I used my iPhone. This is the iPhone 13 Pro Max. It's a wide angle lens, 26 millimeter with an f-stop of 1.5, 50 ISO, and 1/452 of a second taken. And what's wrong with it? is it was totally blown out, but I fell in love with it because there were so many lines leading everywhere. So I've sat on this for 2 years. And earlier this year, I came across a program called Picasso, because I do my post-processing on my iPad. Oh, Pro Mac. Well, it's the iPad Pro that I use. So let's see, what are my notes here? Everything was blown out. And I thought, well, what am I going to do with it? So my workflow took me into Darkroom. I know there's, yeah, you guys are into Lightroom, I understand that, but on a iPad, it's a little different. And I use Darkroom because it has virtually the basic controls, just like Snapseed and things and other programs. I've had trouble with Snapseed taking my raw files. So I've had to use Darkroom when I start out in my workflow. So I took it in Darkroom and said, what am I going to do with it? Well, I started by lowering the brightness. And I thought, oh, wow, yeah, just where that is. And I thought, oh, wow, look what's happening. I'm getting more browns and more definition. And I took it into the next program, which was Picasso. And there I'm able to use it's
Carly,
cartooning.
Carly, you want me to show the after?
Yeah, show the
Okay.
after. Okay, you can see what the tuning does. And I have fallen in love with that application because there's so much definition that I'm not able to get with any place else. So anything else with this? I lowered the brightness. Of course, it was cropped. I increased the contrast, took it to Picasso, and you'll see other future pictures of mine that will have tuning in it also, because it just defined so many things in this picture that you would normally lose. So anyway, any questions?
A comment, Mark, are you zoomed in really far on that image? Can you zoom out a little bit? Because I see she has
Sure.
a little bit of a frame there. Oh, there. Okay. I love how you have that framed, Carla, with, oh, it's just gorgeous. The framing is beautiful there. Love it.
Thank you. Thank you.
The
Hey,
leading
Carla.
lines are fantastic.
Pardon?
The leading lines are fantastic.
Oh, thank you. Yes, they are. And that's the picture on my home screen. So it'll be there for a while.
Carla, I have a quick one for you. You and I talked a little bit on Saturday at Kiwanis Lake, and you said you like a watercolor type look. Was this done with a preset or anything, or?
No, this
No.
was not.
Okay.
Now, Darkroom, when I initially go in there, most of the time I do use a preset. And then you can do take that preset and just do everything else, lower the brightness, increase the contrast, and so on and so on.
Gotcha.
And then once you have the picture looking like you would want it to, then I get the artistic bug in me.
Gotcha. Any other questions?
Carla, I have one. Did you try that in black and white also or not?
No, I have not.
Okay. Just curious.
That's an idea. I might try that. Darkroom has some really, really nice presets for black and white. But this, I mean, this is so real. The train station's brown. When you go out there, everything's brown, everything's brassy or bronze looking.
Okay, great. Any other questions?
This is Joan. I don't have a question, but I would like to say I love the colors. I love the application that you chose for this. Because a lot of times your lines and stuff can be so sharp, so harsh, and these just really flow nice.
Thank you. I thought so too. Uh, one of the things that drew me to this picture was not only leading lines that, of course, take you right down the center and the tracks, but then you have the two little men down there in orange. Okay, that draws your eye too. So yeah, it's just a perfect example of leading lines.
What time of day was it, Carla?
When I initially took that was, let's see, 1 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So that's why it was so blown out.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, well, thank you, Carla. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Enjoy.
Next up is Curtis.
Yes. This was taken at the Eastern State Penitentiary down in Philadelphia. And like Rod, I couldn't make this trip with the club, so I went down the following week and took advantage of some time I had available. The thing that drew me to this image was the perspective. I like this type of perspective, this leading line type perspective. I knew what I was going to do when I went up there. I knew I was going to make this as an HDR. I knew I was going to center it, and I knew it was going to have a lot of leading lines. The lens I used on this one was it was a 15 to 35 zoom. It was shot at 20 millimeters. And I bracketed 5 exposures for this to make my HDR. And when I do that, I usually will look at my my underexposed and make sure that my highlights are protected. And then once I got that, I just let it rip, and I'll take my 5 bracketed shots. Of course, I was on a tripod, and I used the 2-second delay to take the shot. This was at f11, and my ISO was at 400, which is a little higher than what I would normally do, but it worked well for this. Software I used to merge the 5 images, I used Aurora HDR. And of course, then it went into Lightroom. And then I used Topaz Photo AI to do the denoise and whatever else the AI at that point did. It might have done some sharpening. I also used Photoshop in this to clean up some things as well. If you want to put them side by side, that would be great, Mark.
I can do that. I think. Oops, maybe I can't do anything. There we go.
Oh, there you go. So what we have on the right is the merged image. Okay, that was merged, and then on the left is the processed image. And what I did there is I did a lot of stuff actually. Of course, the cropping, added whatever global adjustments, maybe dehaze, contrast, clarity, highlights, black point, those type of things globally. And then I went in and started doing masking. And as you'll notice on the finished image on the left, you're going to see that the lights are lit up. And on the right, the lights are not lit up. So how I did that is I took a radial gradient in the masking, and I then created a small radial gradient at each one of the unlit lights that I wanted to turn on, so to speak. And I then upped the exposure on those. And then I also wanted to cast a little bit of light on the walls. So I did another radial gradient and put it on the wall and make that oblong, and brought the exposure up to where I thought it should be. And then of course a white balance on that to make it warm. And I did that as well. What else we got here? And then we went on to the final image. How do I made it? I do mess with the mid-tone luminance, so that I did bring that up some there. Made sure that the blue was showing up there in the skylights. A little color calibration there, which was to boost the blue channel. Did a finish crop. I did an overall radial gradient, a global one, to try and bring the perimeter a little darker and get the tunnel, so to speak, look there a little brighter. And then I put a little small post crop vignette on it. In all, I did 115 total Lightroom adjustments on this. So there was a lot of time put on it, but it was a lot of fun, actually. I really enjoyed messing with those radial gradients and lighting those lights up. There you have it, Mark.
Okay, any questions?
I have a
Comments?
question. This is Elaine.
Yeah.
Curtis, this is an amazing photo. I really do love it. I have a question though about when you started out, you said you took this into Aurora. Is that where you merged the 5 exposures?
I brought it into Lightroom first, and that's my library. And then from there, then I exported it out to Aurora HDR 2019 to be exact, and then merged those. And as soon as I merge them, I bring them back. I do not use any of their presets at all. All I want Aurora to do is to merge it. I could have used Lightroom to do it as well. I just prefer Aurora over Lightroom. And then of course with that, I went on and did these adjustments back and forth between Photoshop for some things and then back to Lightroom again.
Okay. Yeah, I've never tried merging them in Aurora, and I wondered about that. So you think it does a better job with the merge?
Yeah, absolutely. It for some reason, Lightroom doesn't give me enough contrast or something. It just doesn't give me the realism that I'm looking for.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, Curtis, Rod Frazier. How long did it take for you to produce the final product?
I probably spent a couple hours on this. Yeah, about 2 hours.
I
Thanks.
like it.
Mark, on
Yeah.
his finished shot, can you zoom out a little bit? I think I'm missing a little bit on the upper left-hand corner of his
Hold on
shot.
a second. Let me do it a little differently.
There you
Yeah,
see
the-
that alone?
Okay. There you go. Yeah. Yeah, I love what you did with the lights.
Yeah, I think that was pretty cool. I've been watching a fella out of England do this type of work with the radial gradient, and I said I got to put that to practice. And this was a perfect image for that.
Mm-hmm.
Who is the guy?
I don't know offhand, but I will.
Okay.
I'll let you know.
It's really beautiful.
Thank you.
Kurt, I find it interesting, and possibly you do also. This is Dick Messner. Originally, HDR was so contrasty and so saturated. And today you can do so much with HDR and not really have that gaudiness that HDR first came out with. And I find myself using HDR quite often to merge photos.
Yeah, I agree. I think when it first came out, they applied a preset to your image. And I think that was really the issue there. Now you can get a merged image without any presets in it, and that's what I prefer.
Curtis,
Okay.
what made you decide to go with the more square crop as opposed to the more rectagonal one that the first one shows?
It's all in feel. It felt good. So that's why I did that.
I
Hey, thanks.
understand the feeling, Kurt.
Yeah.
It
Kurt, Kurt, as Mike would say, you are the artist.
doesn't
That's correct. I am the artist.
And
Any
you're a
other
good one.
And I did police my borders, Mike.
You're the man.
Any other comments or questions?
Curtis, are you going to print this image?
I do. I have my own printer here at the house. I use a Canon Pro 1000, and I do have this one printed.
What paper did you use?
This was a Canson Infinity paper I used on this one here, which is one of their Burita. It's it's almost like a luster, but it's not quite.
Yeah. Okay, it's gorgeous, and I'm sure it is hanging on your wall.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Kurt,
Anything else?
how does the printed image compare in your mind to the on-screen image?
I prefer the printed one. That Burita gives me a little more contrast than these images on a computer screen that are backlit. And I do prefer that look better than the on-screen look.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you.
Anything else? All right. Thank you, Curtis.
You're welcome.
Now we're moving on to Ron Maddox.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys are familiar, but this was at the Ocean City Rookery. Carl and I were over there last week. And actually the photo was very difficult because I was headed for an area and I had my 500 lens with a 2x extender on it. And the bird was too close. And as I backed up, there's a great big concrete wall there. And I ended up with my back against that wall. So this was as far back as I could get. And I knew the final image, I was going to have to do a tight crop in order to give it enough headroom not to be too tight. So as you can see, there's a lot of stuff. And go ahead and show the final mark.
Okay. There you go.
So I did remove a lot of things. I used Photoshop to do that. I used the remove tool and it worked really well. But there was so much at the top and stuff that I didn't want to get rid of it all. I was lazy, so I decided I'd use a texture on it. So I used a very dark texture. I only applied it to the background. I didn't put any on the bird at all. It was a moody light, so I used a lot both on that background to get the tone I was looking for, as well as on the bird to just take some of that sunshine off of it and make it a little bit moodier, I guess. And then I just put a little bit of a vignette on it. It was obviously sharp enough that it could handle the crop. So oh yeah, I did add one final touch to it is I used an angel glow on the bird's feathers, very, very low opacity. The opacity on the LUTs that I use are also very low opacity. So they just bend the tone a little bit, I guess. But it ended up being one of my favorite images from the trip. I shot it at shutter speed of 1/8000. I had upped the ISO to 1600 because I wanted to underexpose it by 2/3 in order to not make a glare on the feathers. And it was wide open, with which the 2x extender on that 500 f4 makes it an f8 shot. So
Great. Any questions, comments?
Ron, I have a question. You mentioned about a glow that you add. Can you tell us about that?
yeah, it's in On1 effects. There's a whole list of them. It's the one that most people probably use the least, because if you just hit it and see what it does to your photograph, it never does good things. But if you take that opacity down, it allowed those feathers to get a little bit of thickness without losing their sharpness, I guess is the best way I could put it.
Interesting.
Do you do all your processing in On1?
Other than I used to do most everything in Photoshop, but I would spend 4 and 5 hours and my neck won't stand that anymore. So other than things like the remove tool, generative AI, yeah, I do everything in On1.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments?
I like the image. Very good.
Yeah, I do too.
Love the
Thank you.
image. It's really nice.
Thank you.
All right. Next is Joe Farrell.
Thanks, Mark. I have, what do I want to do this? We only have like 10 minutes left. So yeah, that's what I'll. On this image here, this was in Alaska, up in Homer, which is near the Cook Inlet. And I took about 10,000 shots in the about 5 days we were there. Most of the shots on the first day or two were with blue sky, and I think I threw almost every one of those out because I didn't like the idea of plain blue sky. And luckily, on 2 of the days, we had this kind of a snow. And I'm using I don't have my, I'm using a Nikon Z8, a 150 to 600. This was about 300 millimeters. It would have been at 5.6. The ISO was about maybe 1200, 1400, okay? And and the shutter speed was probably about 1/2000th of a second. I didn't go too much faster for a couple of reasons in the snow. Is the birds were really flying rather slowly. They weren't just, zipping around, bang, bang, here, there type thing. So they were really lollygagging around in the sky. So I could track them really well. And for that, I could track them with my eyes really well. And the camera that I use is a Nikon Z8, Z9 vintage cameras. And they have absolutely wonderful, I think anyways, eye tracking, and where you can get the eyeball of the bird, and then you don't need to do anything. It'll just track it around the screen, except when it was snowing like this. When it was snowing like this, it was really hard to get the bird sharp. It was extremely difficult because the snow was so prolific that the camera didn't really know where to go and what to do. And as soon as the snow started to abate, then all of a sudden the autofocus kicked in really well. On this particular image, I didn't do too much to it. I would take and I use Lightroom almost exclusively, except for just as Rhonda talked about, using generative fill for things. So I use Lightroom, and what I would do is I would take where you see the brown, the body of the bird, the wings. I would use the adjustment brush as a mask, and very sloppily I would go over all of the bird. Then what I would do is I would intersect that mask with a eyedropper for just the brown in the bird. And when I do that, I bring out some of the texture and the detail of the bird that got lost in the snow. And I add a little bit of clarity and texture to that. And so that brings out the bird a little bit more in relationship to the background. And then I do the same thing. I take the beak and his talons there, and I put a adjustment brush on that. Then I intersect that with the color of the beak and the talons. And that's just a matter of taking the eyedropper tool and touching the beak. And now I have just the beak and the colors of that yellow and nothing else. And I can play with them a little bit. I can enhance them a little bit, give a bit more structure, make them pop a little bit more. And so that's what I did with the bird. I went and I did a subject selection on the bird, and I inverted it and darkened the background, but I didn't like that. So that didn't work out well. So then I posted this picture on Facebook, and somebody told me that someone that won't be unnamed says, "Why in the heck did you chop off the bottom of the wing?" And Julie, I never even thought of it. I didn't even think of it. So I went in and I did generative fill, and Mark, you can show the second picture if you would. And there I used generative fill and to put the wing back in. So in preparation for today, I went into some of my other shots, and it's interesting. I use generative fill, and what that means is I expanded the canvas on the bottom, and then I did generative fill. Okay, and it does a great job. I went into about 6 or 7 other bird pictures where I had clipped the wings on the top, and I used generative fill. And you know what? It didn't work well. It extended the feathers all the way to where that I shouldn't have been on. So it works well on the bottom, but didn't work well on the top. So that was it. I only had one casualty, and that was my little finger here, because it got frostbite right on the end because it was so darn cold, and I couldn't use these super duper gloves that are supposed to be great for weather like that. Well, they didn't work worth crap, and so I got my finger cold. But that's it. That's my bird.
Hey, Joe, actually, a quick question. Can you show us one of the ones where you tried to do generative fill on the top and it didn't work?
I probably could if you want me to do that.
Yeah, why don't you?
Okay, well, I'll do that. Let me go here and share my screen. This will stop the other person's screen sharing, okay?
That's okay.
Okay. So I'm going to go to
And Joe, when you say generative fill, you're talking about in Photoshop, correct?
Yes, generative fill in Photoshop, yes. So let's go here, and I need to go here. I'm gonna do that, and I gotta get this screen down so I can do. There we go. And I want to find one of those wings. I took 10,000 pictures. Oh, this would be a good one. Okay. And this is something I did want to mention to you also. This is one where I have a little bit of color in the sky, and so I kept it. But can you guys see the eagle there in the screen?
Yes.
Yes.
See that? Okay. And I gotta get this zoom bar out of here. There we go. Okay. So one thing, this is something I think is really important. You can see here, this is ISO 2500, 1/250th of a second at 200 millimeters using the zoom. And I got to tell you, in that environment, a zoom lens was absolutely critical because as the birds were far away, I might be at 600, and as they came closer, I would be at 200, okay, or 180. And so that was, otherwise I'd be swapping cameras and lenses if I had primes on it. But this is one of the dangers for me anyways, is when I look at an image like this, I look and I say to myself, I want to preserve all the highlights that I can on the bird. But then, and let me get this panel out of the way here. You can't see it. Okay. I look at this, and am I trying to get I'm trying to get the zoom stuff out of the way. Oh, there we go. Okay. If I wanted to now, because obviously this is grossly underexposed, okay? So if I went in here and I did the development, I brought up the shadows, which you can do. You can do that really, really nicely. But look what happens. It brings up a horrendous amount of noise. And that isn't really high ISO noise. That is noise that when you take an image and you close it like that, and looking at the histogram up here, how it's so bunched up on the left that you have a problem if you try and bring it up, because you're going to get a lot of noise. And in these cases, what I would do is I would use the denoise function within the detail panel here in Lightroom, and it would get rid of all the noise. And they also have built into the algorithm for the denoise, they have a little bit of sharpening after they do the denoise. So, and I find that works really, really well for me. I mean, I just love it. I think I've used the Topaz Photo One. I was a big fan of that. And I think this is by and far much, much greater than. So, but that wasn't the question that you asked. And, oh, by the way, if I were to do the noise on this one, it would go relatively quickly. But if I took the denoise on one of those photos that I had with all of the snow in them, it takes forever to run that because there's so much detail it's trying to deal with. Whereas a blue sky like this, it goes really, really quickly. But now if I want to take this, because you asked the question, I'm going to edit into Photoshop. And hopefully I can get to Photoshop and from here. Okay, here we are in Photoshop. Can you guys see that in Photoshop?
Yes.
You can? Okay. So I'm going to expand this. And when you have Zoom, you got all kinds of little buttons and stuff. You got to, come on, get that out of here. There. Okay. So I just expanded it. And now I'm going to do generative expand. And I'm going to click the check mark. And I'm going to say generate. So it's cooking now. And watch, it'll probably prove me to be a liar, but all the other ones that I did, it didn't work. And I don't know why. Oh, it worked. See there, it made me a liar. It worked. So it did a perfect job on that, I think anyways. Okay. So what I would do then is I would take that and I would do, oh my gosh, I've never worked with this so many screens. I gotta, no, zoom. Come on, that's not what we want. I want to do file close. But if I do that, no, come on. You know, I don't know if I can get back to there, but I'm going to go back to the Lightroom version like this. And if I were to run denoise, I'm going to zoom in. And if I run denoise on this, and it won't take too long. And as I do that, I'm going to see the noise here. And this is all digital noise, basically, because of the way I grossly underexposed it. So I'm going to say enhance. And it should be cooking right now. And I can't see the box where it's cooking.
Yeah, there is. It's in the upper left corner.
Okay, and I can't see that because of all my little... It does a really good job once it comes, and then it generates a DNG, because you can see this is a NEF now. That's a NEF, which is the Nikon format, but it's going to generate a DNG. Tell me how far it's gone. Is it almost done?
It's about 60, 70%.
Okay.
It'll be done momentarily.
If it was snowy, this would probably take 3-4 minutes. It's amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, it's something. So
the generative fill was done in Photoshop.
that was in Photoshop. Then I came back to Lightroom. Okay.
Here you
Now
are. You're done.
Now you can see it took all the noise out of that image, and it also sharpened it a little bit. Okay. And I find that to be very well done. So Mark, can you take me back to the image that was part of the I'll have to stop share. Here we go. Let me do that. Okay.
And I'm going to do something different too. So hold on a second.
Anybody have any questions while Mark's doing that?
Joe, this is Joan. I have 2 questions actually. When you were making your adjustments on the bird in Lightroom, I believe you were making them with shadows, maybe with the color. How did it affect the snowflakes that were on top of the eagle?
Well, that is the reason why I highlighted the bird, and then I used the intersect with color. And then I went in very closely, like right in here, and I selected the brown like that right there as an example. And what it did was it only selected the brown part of the eagle and none of the snow, 0. And
Wow.
then I could independently adjust the contrast, light, dark, texture, and clarity on just the bird, on just the dark part of the bird without.
I'm sorry, you did that by color then?
Yes, I do it this way. I could have gone select subject and blah, 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 but I take an adjustment brush and I slop it all over and get it all covered like that. And then I go in and I say intersect with color, and I select the color and it selects just those colors, which is the dark, and then I could make my adjustments. I did the same thing on the beak and on the talons, okay? And I said, give them a little bit of a brightness and a little bit of texture and clarity on those guys, and it did that.
That's very, very clever. Very good. My other question was, I like the denoise in Lightroom quite a bit. It looks it works fantastic on people, by the way.
Okay.
But if I take it into another plugin, another, editing plugin, such as Photoshop on one, and I do something there, and then when I bring it back into Lightroom, the denoise won't work because it can't work on that format.
Right.
Is there a way to override that?
No, I don't think so. They're looking at you. What format does it come back into Lightroom as? Is it come in?
Well, I think on one it would come back as a TIFF.
Okay.
The Photoshop, it comes back as a PSD.
Yeah. No, you can't use denoise only on the raw convert when you're using the raw converter. You can't do I don't think it'll work on a TIFF. I don't think so. I may be wrong.
No, it won't. No, I've done that. It only works on whatever your format is.
Okay. So what I do is I make sure that before I use the noise, I get the crop the way I want it, okay? So that I don't have to spend more time denoising things that I'm gonna throw away anyway. So I always make sure I do that.
Yes. Yeah, I do something like that too.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Hey, Joe, on the original snap, just a question on the camera. So does depth of field actually impact the camera's ability to do the eyeball tracking? Meaning, like, if it's real shallow, does the camera struggle more with tracking the eyeball, or no relation at all?
No, I don't find a relationship on this particular camera. I have to tell you, it's absolutely phenomenal how you can track on the eyeball, and then wherever the bird goes, it stays on the eyeball as long as the eyeball is visible. If the eyeball is not visible, then it goes to the head. Okay, and then if it's round, then of course it can't do anything. But as long as you can see the eyeball, it'll track it all the way. Track it all the way around to the frame. And when we started, I think 3 of us had Nikon cameras. We all had the same one. And we found that after about maybe the first half of the day, we never looked at the images to see if they were sharp, because we knew they were going to be sharp. It was so much on, it was phenomenal. Huh. And then when the snow came, we were expecting the same thing, of course, and it didn't happen. Oh man, we were upset. We were yelling, blah, 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 blah. But yeah, it does a really, really good job on the tracking. And I know that the Canons and the Sonys do the same thing really well anymore.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Joe, what do you think of that lens?
I think that there's a phenomenal lens. I love it. It's a 180 to 600. It's fairly reasonably priced, and I love the zoom range on it. If I didn't have that zoom lens, I would have come back with about a third less. I mean, about 2/3 less images, because they would have been just all, too far away or too short. Yeah, it was just great.
It was plenty sharp at 600.
Yeah, there was no doubt that the sharpness was not an issue at all with that lens.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Thanks, Joe.
Sure.
We have one more to do. And that is mine. And I'm going to do it a little bit differently because I'm in control and can do that.
No, man. Watch out, folks.
Okay. This was shot at Craig's Head House. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, it's just to the west of Boiling Springs along the Yellow Breeches. It's a historical house that a
Hey, Mark.
family. Yeah,
We still see Joe's picture.
you do.
Yeah, it's opening camera.
You,
My
screen
one, but-
sharing. Oh, why is it paused? Huh.
You are doing it different.
Does
Well-
Joe have to unshare?
No,
Did you enter your screen?
Joe should be done already. What I'm going to do
I
is
know.
I'm going to unshare and then reshare. I think if I can find that. I don't know why it's paused. I know why it's paused.
Did you break it?
Hmm.
Can you see it now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Again, this was shot at Craig Head House, which is his. My understanding is there was a family that lived there that was one of the leaders in conservation efforts in Pennsylvania, and at one time Pennsylvania was the leader in conservation in the country. So it's a pretty big deal. It's owned by, I believe it's owned by the Cumberland Valley Historical Society now. And one day last year they had a falconer out. So I took this picture of a Harris hawk, which is not indigenous to this area. It's indigenous to the Southwest. I was using a 100 to 400 millimeter lens on a Sony A7 RR3. ISO was 4000, and I shot this at 12/50th of a second. When I first looked at it, I wasn't particularly happy because this section right here, the beak, looked all blown out. And if you look at the values, you're seeing a lot of 255. So that had me upset. But when I looked at the histogram, I could see there was just a little notch at the up against the right-hand side. And when I first bought my camera, I did an experiment with it to see how much overexposure I could get and still be able to recover the details in the highlights. And this looked like it would fall in that category. So before I threw it away and said it was no good, I took the exposure and just, see if I get it here. I took the exposure and jacked it down. And as you can see, all the detail came back to the beak. So I proceeded to, let me get the right image up here. So I proceeded to crop it. So it looked like this, much more impressive looking. And then I started processing it. And like Curtis, this took me quite a while because I did a lot of work. I think I've got 11 or 13 layers in here. So I cropped it, and then I did some what I call base adjustments. This was all to get it.
I just select that beak and put it on the other bird and you're almost there.
Yeah. And then I decided to put more clarity into the feathers, which I did here. This may be hard for you to see. And then it was like, well, the emphasis of this bird should be on its head. So I started working on that. I brightened the head up a little bit. And when I did that, I started to get what you would call blinkies again, or exposure warnings that I was overexposed. So I went to fine tuning, which again brought the exposure down a little bit. So I got some detail back in here. And in the process of doing this, I realized that the eye darkened farther than I wanted it to. So I processed the eye a little bit, and this was the processing of the eye was really just I just increased the exposure a little, and I increased the brightness. If your exposure is pretty good, a lot of times what you can do is just increase whitening. It'll kind of make the It kind of make the eyes show up better. And then I went back in and did some more work on the beak. So I made it a little bit darker, got a little more detail out of it. And then I started looking around saying, well, I got a spot here I don't like, and I got a spot here I don't like. So I put a heel layer in there. And then I started, and I looked at it and said, you know, I really, this kind of golden brown color on the edges here, I kind of like it. And so what I did is I created a color mask to brighten that up, to make to bring that color to the forefront. And let's see if I can find it here. So the mask, what I did is I picked the color, and then I created a mask based on that color, and that's what the red is now, to show you what it looked like. I liked the way it was going, but when I got to here, I liked it, and then I said, you know, it's not sticking out from the background enough. So I added another layer to basically brighten the background a little bit, which is the opposite of what you think a lot of times. And I also reduced the contrast. So the bird was the sharpened, and then the last step was I sharpened the bird. So that's how I got to this image. Any questions or comment? Oh, one more thing I need to say, one more comment I want to make. If you look at the histogram, it's come a long way. You don't have anything in the highlights here. And there's a landscape photographer out of the UK who did a talk, quite extensive talk one time about when you look at your histogram and you look at the back of your camera and you're looking at to see if it's blown out or not, what you're looking at is the histogram for the JPEG that's being shown to you. It's not the RAW file. So sometimes if you're just a little bit over the limits, that's going to show you that's blown out. In the raw data, it's not blown out. He uses a phase 1 camera, which is really nice because that actually shows the histogram of the raw file, not of a converted JPEG. So what I recommend people do, and I did it when I got my camera because I used Canons for years and I switched to Sony, and I wanted to see what it would do for highlight recovery. I took a white thing with texture, a towel, shot it, and then kept overexposing it until 2-3 stops overexposed, and to see at what level I could still use my exposure to pull back detail. And so that's why I knew when I saw that little notch in the original image that I could probably still recover it. So, end of my speech. Any questions?
I have a question. I must have missed what software this is.
Oh,
Mark.
I'm using Capture One.
Okay.
Okay. Pretty much everything I did here, you can do in Lightroom. I switched to Capture One when I bought my Sony, and I got really accustomed to the workflow. I like having the layers and being able to turn them off and all that kind of thing. So that's why I use that. Any other questions?
Your processing is fantastic, Mark. Thank you for sharing.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, excellent image, Mark, no doubt.
Oh, thanks. Thanks. I mean, this one, like Curtis, I took a couple of hours, and I also, when I'm really getting into an image and I really like the way it looks, I also show it to my wife.
Okay.
Because she'll pick out the things that I don't pick out. You know, and because I mean, I had a picture one time of a hawk that I took, and I really liked it. I printed it out, and she looked at it and went, "Why does it have a green color cast?" And I said, "Well, it's got a green color cast because I'm red-green colorblind." So, but when she said it, I could see it because it was very faint. But when she said it, I could see it, and then I was able to fix it. All right. Any other questions, comments?
Just a comment.
Hey, Mark, this is Dave Marchetto. Very nice.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
And I never use some of these other programs folks are talking about, you know, Topaz and all that. So you didn't use that for this, or do you just stay in Capture One? Does that do everything you need to do? Which it looks like it does.
Yeah, for this one, I stayed in Capture One, and I usually, if I have to denoise something, I use
see.
Topaz Denoise AI, or I use Photo AI.
Uh-huh.
But this one, even though it's at 4,000 ISO, it didn't need any denoising. I was really surprised, to put it bluntly, that it didn't need more work than that. But I use Topaz when I need it. I don't use Photoshop. I use Affinity Photo, so I'll use that occasionally when I need to. But pretty much everything I do in Capture One. I'd say 90% of the time.
Is that supposed to be better for tethered processing? I kind of heard somewhere along the way.
Actually, yes, it's it was originally designed for tethered work in studios,
Oh, okay.
and it was designed to be used with phase one cameras.
Okay.
It supports many cameras. The only camera that I know of that it flat out does not support and never will is a Hasselblad. Because they're direct competitors to the
Interesting.
phase one. But the company split. It's no longer Capture One and used to own phase one, and they split into two separate companies now. So I don't know where that's going to go in the future.
Do you have like a Lightroom subscription to it, Mark? How does it work? Do you own it, or
There's two ways. You can outright own it, or you can do a subscription. I tend to do a subscription because I have found some of the updates to be very useful.
give or take, is it comparable to cost-wise a subscription to, the Lightroom Photoshop package?
I think it's a little bit more expensive.
But it's still in the ballpark kind of
It's
thing?
still in the ballpark, yeah.
Yeah. It's really nice.
Oh, thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Mark, how much did you crop this image?
Oh, goodness. Hold on a second. I can tell you in a minute. There's an easy way to do this. Hold on a second. Boy, I probably took out about a third of the image area-wise.
Okay. Don't take this as a criticism because it's really a gorgeous photo. It's more of a question in that when I look at this on my monitor, the background is pixelated, though the bird is not. So the cropping shouldn't have done that. Do you think that, and I don't know if anybody else sees it, if that's a function of Zoom or maybe my monitor?
I don't know, because I'm not seeing pixelation at all. And
This
and
is
this
so- I
and to
don't
be
see-
honest with you, the dimensions you're seeing here, the 19 by 12.65 length, that's at 300 DPI.
Mhm. I don't see the pixelization myself.
I can see it, since he, showed us this screen, how much he had cropped. It's on the outside of whatever is not cropped, and a little bit on the inside too, now that I'm looking.
Oh, see what you started, Elaine.
But I just thought it was the monitor. Or,
It could, because like I said, I don't see any pixelation at all when I look at it. But it's something I'll have to take another look at it because I don't see it. And I haven't printed this yet, so I don't know, printing would help me see if it's real or not in the image.
it's not on the bird. I don't see it on the,
Yeah,
hawk.
it's, well,
So I don't know how or why that would happen.
That is strange.
it is very. Because you're seeing it, I'm not. Some people are, some people aren't. That is strange.
I'm seeing it. It looks like a screening material from a screen door.
Really?
Yeah, I see that too. It's like you can see the actual squares.
Yeah, and mine's shifting. It shifts a little, then it goes, and then it comes back.
Mine clearly looks like pixelation, especially if you zoom in any more than it already is. You can see the pixels.
Wow.
Well, whoever
It's gonna
can
be
see the
something that
pixels.
we've had this problem before with Zoom. Maybe it's a Zoom thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
Could be.
Because Joe, you're not seeing it.
I do not, I'm using the MacBook Pro and on this, and I don't see it at all. Can you zoom in a little bit just on it, Mark? Yeah,
Joe, I'm on my MacBook Pro too.
and I don't see it at all.
I'm on my my Mac Studio with a 4K monitor, and I'm not seeing it.
Hmm.
Well, maybe whoever's seeing it, the club should buy them new monitors, maybe.
Okay,
Yeah.
Mike.
Okay, I see it.
I can see it.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Well, Mike, I've got a MacBook Pro just like Joe, so
Oh,
Well, you need a whole new computer then.
right.
it's brand new.
Huh.
I think Mike should give us all free software that takes spots out of an image. It's a spot removal software. I think he should come up with one and give one to everybody.
That's right.
I
deep
will work on
pixelation.
that.
Okay.
Okay, guys.
Mark, I really like the catch light in the eye of the bird.
Well, thank you.
That
That's
wasn't
what
there. I hope you put it there on purpose.
I did not put it there. That was what was there. I kind of look for that now. I mean, you watch so many people take wonderful pictures, and it's like, watch the catch light. The other thing that I liked with this image is the fact that the light part of the background goes right through his eyes. His eyes are right in line with it. And I kind of dug that, because that's the yellow breeches right back there. Okay, any other questions or insults?
Didn't mean it
Just
that
give
way.
us more
Mark.
time.
I know, Elaine, I'm fine. I just couldn't resist. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing. Stop share. Okay. All right, folks. That is the end of the meeting. I appreciate everybody being here. This was wonderful. Next time, the more remember for the next time, the more people who submit photos, the less you have to listen to me and Joe talk. All right. Bye now.
Okay. Goodbye.
Great meeting, Mark.
Thanks,
and Joe.
everybody.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Nice work,
Good.
Mark.
Good
Hey,
job, Mark.
So how many?
I saw 27 people.
Did you? That's
Yeah.
good. That was
Yeah.
good.
That was a good turnout, especially with only 7 images to go through.
Yeah. That
So,
was-
but we filled up the time
Yep.
constructively.
Okay, Mark, we will see you.
Yep. Take it
No.
easy.
Thank you. Bye now.
Bye.